Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So I was going to go and make a video about Rhulk today, and continue that raid video schedule that we were working on. We're still going to work through all of that. But the seasonal story dropped and promptly threw any pretense of sticking to a reasonable schedule out of the window because it's just, well, I mean, we've got to talk about it. We'll pick up on the raid lore in a bit, a few videos later in the week, so you can definitely expect us to talk about that. But we have got to talk about the conclusion to Operation Elberus. In fact, we need to talk about all of Operation Elberus, seeing as the only thing I've covered is that week 2 cutscene from Lord Saladin where he describes the price of mercy and all that. So today, we'll be looking at all of this, going through the story and talking a little bit about the lessons we've all learned. I think we were all expecting this to be a big kind of teachable moment story for Crow, and at the end of the story it totally is, but it's also one of those storylines that really made me appreciate Lord Saladin. He's learned and grown in his own way since the season's beginning, and since the season of The Chosen, and seeing this story arc come to a head was a really gratifying moment. To get there though, we are going to need to go ahead and give a little bit of context. The start of the story for the Season of the Risen actually begins with the discovery of Savathun's ship, the Lure, on Mars by the Cabal. Witch Queen and the Season of the Risen both kick off with the same event essentially. We're dispatched to the area so that we can infiltrate the ship, and this leads us to the point of conflict with the Cabal, who are setting up weapons emplacements within the proximity of the ship so that they can attack it. We commandeered one of these massive guns and launched ourselves to the Lure by literally being the ordnance, starting a series of events that would occur within the Witch Queen campaign. But the thing is, during that operation, we also killed a bunch of Cabal soldiers from Keitel's Ascendancy in order to accomplish our task. This action, like many others in the seasonal story, would have consequences. Consequences that would face us within the Tower Hangar.
You opened fire on us.
My warriors were responding to unexpected threats.
Surprised you had any troops left to report the incident.
Not sure I'd go in there if I were you.
The rules of engagement had changed.
I don't need to listen to this.
Guardian, what fortuitous timing.
Indeed. I'm fresh from performing Cabal funeral rites. Care to explain?
Our condolences, Empress. Your people fought and died with honor. But they didn't have to.
We can all prevent future losses if we choose to put the incident on Mars behind us and work together. What we discovered there is a threat to both humanity and the Cabal.
You want my help.
Want is a strong word.
You need my help.
I don't know how the Hive came into possession of the light. Ikora will find out. But in the meantime...
Invincibility lies in the defense. The possibility of victory in the attack.
Sun Tzu.
I've read your texts. You want us to hit them.
I need us to hit them. Hard.
Whilst we were able to smooth things over with the Cabal this time, and whilst the Cabal would be able to offer us a greater degree of assistance, it would come with a rather strict warning from Empress Keitel. Take a listen.
I meet you in blood, Guardian. There was violence between your people and mine. This will be forgiven. Once.
This loss of Cabal life would be forgiven once and only once. Any further loss of life would need to be repaid in blood, as was Cabal tradition. Whether Keitel was sending us a threat or giving us a warning, the new enemy of the Lucent Hive would be a problem for all of us. It would be the beginning of what would bring the Cabal Ascendancy and the Vanguard closer together, and would in effect create the foundation for what we would begin to call the Coalition. This is a huge moment for all of us, because it establishes the fragile beginnings of an alliance between the powers in Sol, which would be able to stand in opposition to the Black Fleet. This is a moment that we've all speculated on for quite a while. We've seen all the various powers within the system either align themselves to the Guardians of Earth and to their own mutual desire for survival, or to servitude in the name of the Witness and the Black Fleet and the Darkness. And so, our joint operation with Keitel Scions would begin, and it would be the first moment at which this fledgling coalition would find ground of common enemies. We would hunt down the various Lucent Hive across the system, and with Scion assistance, we would neutralize them. We would do battle with the Lucent Hive in the Scion-created mindscape, and after defeating them, they could be abducted by the Scions for psychic analysis. With no ghost and no worm, the Scions were essentially holding these Lucent Hive in a state of near-constant limbo, neither truly dead nor truly alive. It was this state in which they were being left that bothered Crow so much. I've already shown you the previous cutscene with Lord Saladin where he tries to educate Crow on the cost of mercy, so I won't show that again here. It's in the previous video and you can go ahead and catch that if you just go ahead and search on my channel. It might be in the recommended, or at very least I'll leave something at the end screen. However, even if you're not going to get shown it here, I think it's worth talking about why Crow cares so much about the fate of the Hive. In short, it's because he feels guilt for his actions in his former life as Uldren Sov, and he sees himself as a monster for all those past actions, and as a result, he sees a little bit of himself in the Lucent Hive. The Lucent Hive are also monsters. After all, they're Hive. They've committed genocide against countless thousands of species and civilizations, and then they were chosen by the Light, just like he was. Even though Uldren Sov went ahead and murdered Cayde Six, even though Uldren Sov is responsible for the creation of the Scorn and the destruction of much of the Reef, Crow was given mercy in spite of Uldren Sov's sins, so why shouldn't the Hive in this instance, these Lucent Hive, who also have no memories of their past lives and were also chosen by the Traveler and who also now wield its light? Was it morally acceptable for the Vanguard to essentially torture fellow Lightbearers? Although, maybe it's not completely torture. After all, it's been explained that in this state, they don't feel pain. But is it morally right to keep them between life and death, having their minds scraped out by the Scions and used in such a barbaric manner? In Crow's mind, I think it's fair to say he wonders if there was ever a possibility of the Lucent Hive being redeemed like he was, in spite of their barbaric schemes. These pleas for empathy fell mostly on Saladin's deaf ears, but it was Zavala that encouraged Saladin to stick with Crow and to still be at his side even as he learned and grew. Take a listen to a conversation of theirs that explains more on this.
Did you assure him that they aren't suffering?
It was a stupid question.
Saladin.
There's no answer I could have given that would satisfy him. It doesn't matter whether or not they suffer, if they're alive or dead or something in between. He sees himself in them, like he sees himself in Uldren.
How do you know this?
I asked Keitel Scion. Crow radiates pain, he said. He's the one suffering, and in a way his ghost can't heal. I know what self-loathing feels like.
And I know grief.
This isn't anything like... You're stronger than he is.
And who helped me find that strength when I was at my lowest? Crow is grieving. For himself, for the innocence he's lost. For the price of the truth.
He's going to hurt himself, or worse, hurt someone else.
You've always been more than a soldier, Saladin. You're a protector. So protect.
As the weeks progressed, more progress with attempting to shut down the operations of the Lucent Hive was made. We shut away Lightbearer after Lightbearer and gained more psionic intelligence. In the midst of this investigation, Saladin shared his thoughts with us on Crow's attitude and made the suggestion that an interaction with the Scion leading the intelligence operation in the Scisorium might actually be helpful.
Crow has been sulking more than usual lately. Perhaps I should encourage him to speak with the Scion as well. It may do him good. I will contact you when we have taken the new information from the Hive. Until then, Iron Will, Guardian.
At the time, we all wondered whether Crow might be able to find some clarity with the Scion, or whether he might be able to reconcile his past. After all, previously it had felt so much pain resonating from Crow. He was like a walking wound of some sort. Maybe a conversation with a being that could gain deeper insights into his mind might help set some things at rest. After all, Crow is one who is very much likely to speak with another alien species. He has no qualms about doing dealings with the Eliksni. He has no motion by which he knows that any of them are evil by design. He does, in many ways, see the best in all beings. Unfortunately, though, this is not what happened. This isn't even close to what happened. In the following week, the Scion revealed the plans of the Lucent Hive and briefed Saladin, who in turn would brief you before we began our assault on the moon.
Load your guns, Guardian. The Scion has discovered the truth behind the Hive's plans. They're vying for control of the Scarlet Keep on the moon. The Lucent Hive want to take it from Xivu Arath's forces and claim it for themselves. They're using their stockpiled light, taken from dead Guardians, and trying to manifest Savathun's throne world. If they're successful, they'll launch a full-scale invasion of Earth. This was their plan from the beginning. Take our home, corrupt our planet, overrun us, remove us from the universe. And when we are gone, forgotten, they will become the Guardians. Go to the Scarlet Keep. Summoning the throne world will take an elaborate ritual. Stop it. Keitel has pledged her full support and is already approaching the moon with her forces. Let that be the last thing these hives see. Unity in the face of oblivion. Show them that even if they destroy us, they will never destroy who we are. I'm counting on you, young wolf.
The Lucent Hive are attempting to turn Savathun's throne world in on the material plane and place it on the Scarlet Keep on the moon. This ritual for the Hive is not even slightly unheard of. The Hive of Oryx's broods celebrate something called Inversion Day, when they performed a similar ceremony successfully within Oryx's throne world as they implanted it into physical space that was shared with the Dreadnought. This is a kind of crazy process. It definitely involves magic that is directly taken from the darkness. It's a power of the deep that Oryx learned and recited from the Tablets of Ruin himself. And so the amount of power the Lucent Hive are exercising here is quite clearly immense. But more so than that, it's also a very clearly desperate scheme. It does make a great degree of sense that the Hive would wish to take the moon for themselves, so they could wish to launch a proper assault on the Lost City and the Traveler. But also, it's worth remembering that the Hive of the Moon have been trying to do this for decades, if not centuries. Savathun also essentially encouraged the Scarlet Keep's construction in the mind of Hashladun, Crota's daughter, and the reason she did this was not because she thought that it would assist her, but because she knew that it would be their downfall. Creating the Scarlet Keep led the Guardians to the Hive of the Moon's brood, and then the Moon's brood of Hive were utterly decimated by Guardian assaults. This was a moment at which Savathun deliberately ployed to bring the downfall of another group of Hive, because their position on the moon would be untenable. Savathun is dead, and I would wager that it is not her plan to go ahead and take the Scarlet Keep, a place that previously has been cited for all sorts of weaknesses amongst the Hive. I think this was a plan concocted by one of her lesser lieutenants, maybe one of her inner council, maybe her ghost Imaru, but either way, I don't believe Savathun is behind this. If she is, then we probably don't understand the full reasons as to why the moon was being taken, and I think that this plan was made with the idea that it was probably going to fail. But again, I speculate on whether that's even the case now that Savathun is dead. Either way, taking this same territory from her perspective is neither tactically sound nor particularly cunning, which makes me think this was not what Savathun had in mind. Either way, success for her here would be disastrous for all of us. If we move swiftly enough to stop all of the rituals going on here, we might be able to prevent the Lucent Hive from replacing us as the Guardians under the Traveler. But even so, we're going to need assistance here, not only of Keitel's Scions, but also of her Cabal champions. And that's exactly what happens. We storm the Scarlet Keep, and we use the assistance of Keitel's champions to put a stop to a wizard commanding the ritual. Such a victory was a high point for the Coalition. Cabal and Guardian forces fighting side by side had accomplished a victory that would have been impossible for either party had they worked alone. But during this whole operation, something wasn't quite right. Crow had not checked in. We returned to the Sisorium, and that soaring sense of hope for a strong coalition that might stand against the darkness began, almost instantly, to turn to ash right in front of our eyes.
What happened?
I didn't mean to.
A full abort sequence initiated from this location. What have you done?
I shut it down. I didn't know it would kill the Scion.
Keitel sends an emissary to the tower, and you kill him. Can you even understand the repercussions this will have?
I'll face them. What the Vanguard was doing here wasn't right.
It's not your place to judge.
You said the right path can be hard to find, but when you do, you have to be strong enough to walk it.
I also said mercy to an enemy must not come at the cost of their victims.
We already disrupted Savathun's ritual on the moon. I couldn't stand by while we did this to these Hive.
The Hive are monsters.
So was I.
When Keitel learns of this, I hope the Vanguard can survive your conscience.
You understand, don't you?
Whilst what Crow did was an accident, the ramifications of his actions would have staggering consequences. The Coalition was one forged on fragile beginnings. After all, the Red Legion and the Cabal had always been a threat to humanity, even before they had invaded the Last City and tried to steal the light for themselves. Keitel told us that she would forgive such transgressions as the murder of Cabal only once. We had used up our only chance at forgiveness here and now. However, in this moment, Crow had murdered the Scion that was close to Keitel, one of her oldest friends, one of her most trusted confidants, the one that she had trusted to not only be the envoy to the Guardians of the Tower, but also to run the entirety of the Sisorium's operations, to scrape the minds of the Lucent Hive for information. This was a key member of the Ascendancy, and Crow, even though he had done so accidentally, had killed them, and Crow would therefore have to pay a price in blood for the death of this Scion. One cannot help but feel angry at Crow, I know I did. He might have been working to confront the guilt of his past life, but he allowed that guilt to turn his path towards actions that were selfish, as he failed to consider what his actions would do to the rest of us. Whilst he certainly acted out of a degree of compassion towards fellow Lightbearers, albeit Hive Lightbearers, he failed to acknowledge the consequences those actions would have. Morally speaking, I think there's two ways to look at this. Crow's perspective and Saladin's perspective, ones that quite cleanly align with moral absolutism and moral relativism. Moral absolutism would call Crow's actions and the way that he stuck to his principles just. In Crow's eyes, a moral line was crossed, and though the fact that these Hive weren't in pain does help muddy the waters somewhat, Crow's not completely wrong in his assessment that this is barbaric and immoral, holding people so close to death and yet not letting them die. The Hive have done barbaric things to the rest of us, And doing this does put us on a path that is uncomfortably similar to theirs and how it starts. However, there is also the morally relativist perspective for us to consider, which I think most of us are aligned with, which states that yes, these actions are potentially immoral, but it would be crueler not to do it, or to jeopardize the action of doing so. This is a far more practical way to look at the situation. By jeopardizing the Sisorian program, Crow not only risks war between the Ascendancy and the city, thus putting all lives in danger, but also he risks breaking the Coalition. The Coalition may well be something that helps to save humanity in the future as we face the Black Fleet. We may not be able to see the consequences of such an action if the Coalition did descend and devolve into nothing, but I think it's undoubtedly the case that if even a single life was lost because the Coalition fell apart, the blood is now, at very least in part, on Crow's hands. Accident though this may have been, Crow's actions may have killed the Coalition in its crib, along with any other diplomatic ties that it might forge between Earth and Torobatl. One thing is certain, a great cost of some kind must be paid in order to keep the Coalition intact. And furthermore, if Keitel is true to her word, for a life taken, a life must be spent in return for justice to be done.
Crow, how do you justify the innocent blood on your hands? It was honorable.
It was an accident.
The Cabal word for accident has 2 syllables. One is fault, the other responsibility. Honor the scion whose life was taken. A life for a life. That is our way.
That is your way, not ours.
You will not deny us justice!
Do what you believe is right. I did.
I will honor you. You demand a life for a life. Take mine.
Cabal reward bravery in the face of death. I accept. Your life is forfeit. You will serve the rest of your days on my war council as Brachus Forge.
Then it's done.
Zavala, you can't...
Not a word.
Saladin's actions here might seem strange, but I want to read you all something that Saladin said long ago to a flock of young guardians. Take a listen to this. Nothing born is born strong. I know I began weak, the same as you. I don't care if you're an exo staring at that number and wondering where you've come from, or a human hungry to understand the ancient world that left you for dead, or an awoken reborn in the very essence of what your people hide from. Together, we're the pointed end of a long stick of happenstance. Change one ripple in an ancient ocean, and we would never have been granted the light within us, or the good ghosts that want to help us. Humble origins. Every world begins as a big pebble lost among trillions of pebbles. Every worthy sun was once cold hydrogen spread thin across the vacuum. Even the universe, this cosmic garden that surrounds us and awes us, this monument to creation, was once the size of an apple seed. And everything that's splendid and great stands at the end of incalculable chance and mayhem. Yes, you have talents, enormous, wondrous powers. But you should put the smirk away. Do you know what a guardian is? Not yet. Your name is another pebble. You are a cold apple seed. But you will grow. I wonder if Saladin remembered back to these words as he made that decision to stand before Keitel and offer his life in payment of Crow's debts. Nothing is born strong, and Crow was only reborn a few years ago. He had been saddled with an immeasurable degree of guilt. Saladin knows that this apple seed needs time to set down its roots, and I think by paying Crow's debt with his own lifetime's worth of service to the Cabal, he is allowing those roots to grow. He knows that Crow will make errors early in his Guardian life, just as he did, just as Zavala did, just as we all did. He knows as well that the Coalition is another apple seed, one that we have all worked tirelessly to nurture and grow, so that it may shelter us from the coming storm. In a way, his actions have only helped to strengthen the Coalition. Humanity and the Cabal now share a voice within Keitel's War Council, and the bonds between the Ascendancy and the Tower have been saved. Saladin should be thanked. Brachus Forge, as he will now be known, has ultimately saved more lives in this one moment through the sacrifice of his own autonomy than we could possibly calculate. It may be a decision upon which the lives of every citizen within the city rest, and every citizen within Keitel's Ascendancy. The Tower and the Cabal being joined together in union like this is only something that can strengthen us, and I think we need to remember how far Saladin has come. From someone who hated the Cabal and who actively fought against any kind of diplomacy with them in the Season of the Chosen, Saladin has reached this point where not only has he made further dealings with the Cabal, but also has trusted their honor and his life to that honor. He has seen the similarity between himself and the Cabal, and more importantly, he has seen the bigger picture. He has understood that any previous ideas of what he had about the Cabal and their notion of honor are only partly true, and that there is a bigger picture to consider when everyone's lives are at stake. He is, and I think it's fair to say, the real hero of this story. He also has one final message for us in particular, as do Zavala and Crow, who have more input on the story at the very end as it begins to close out here. Take a listen to this.
I suppose you're here to say goodbye, young wolf? Or to demand to know why? Because I chose to. I saw you fighting alongside Keitel's warriors on the moon. A strong alliance. The Vanguard needs it now more than ever before. But Zavala, I also saw the look in his eyes. He would have thrown it all away to protect one of his people. And for a time, he would have believed that was mercy. I'm starting to think people don't really listen to my stories. I was given a wish once, and I chose to fight a dragon, because we are what we survive. I will serve this alliance. My shoulders have borne more weight than this. My honor holds its luster through deeper stains. If this is the cost of tomorrow for the Vanguard, I will gladly pay it. Keitel stayed her hand when I placed myself at her mercy, because she chose to. That I can respect. I told Keitel she'd have to kill me to keep me from the Iron Banner. She said that wouldn't be necessary. In fact, she has a few ideas of her own. This may prove interesting. I left something in the helm for Crow. If he's half as smart as he thinks he is, he'll understand what it means. Until our paths cross again, young wolf.
It makes me wonder what changes Keitel has in mind for the Iron Banner. Anyway, for context, Crow was left Saladin's Iron Battle Axe, a relic of the Iron Lords with a truly devastating past, one with the power and flame of Iron Lord's light imbued within it. However, he also left something smaller, but with a far greater meaning to Crow in particular. He left him the crest of the Iron Lords that he pushed into the hands of the young thief all those centuries ago. A reminder that actions have consequences, even if they seem like they are the right choices in the moment. and a reminder that mercy for our enemies cannot come at the cost of mercy to their victims. Crow has undoubtedly been foolish. His naivety has nearly broken the alliance of the Tower and the Cabal, but his point about the immorality of the operations being conducted in the Sisorium has no longer fallen upon deaf ears. For Crow to have acted, there was a great deal of moral strife that needed to be present, much as also this was motivated by his own guilt. And Zavala has noticed this. We hear more on this when Zavala sends us a final message.
It's over, Guardian. The Lucent Brood will never take the Scarlet Keep, and their invasion force is in shambles. I'm grateful Saladin stepped in when he did. He preserved the Cabal alliance without bloodshed. I'm afraid I was about to do something rash. All these centuries later, and Saladin is still saving me from myself. I decommissioned the psychic analysis program, against Keitel's recommendations. I suggested she continue to collect the dead Hive lieutenants for incineration, but that seemed to put her mind at ease. She's been true to her word. Crow's life debt is paid. Our coalition is back on solid ground. I have my reservations, but Saladin believes this is the best path forward. The Scion is avenged in the eyes of the Cabal, a gift that I assure you is not lost on the Empress. And most importantly, humanity finally has a voice on her war council. We must respect Saladin's choice.
Lastly, Crow and Saladin spoke more about the sacrifice that Saladin made on Crow's behalf. And in this moment, I think Crow has really started to learn what responsibility looks like. And if there is a further chapter for growth for Crow, then undoubtedly it starts here. Even though this is where I think we all believed it would end. Crow is becoming a Guardian, and that journey takes a long time.
It should have been me. I could have died for something I believed in.
You lack the self-awareness to know what you believe in. Your mind is a storm of guilt, both your own and someone else's. We put a gun in your hand and told you who we wanted you to be. And now you're struggling to reconcile a lifetime of Uldren Sov's experience with only a few years of your own. We all die a final death. Yours was not meant to be today.
I was wrong about you, Saladin. I'm so sorry.
I respect you for sticking to your convictions, but let this be another lesson. Doing what you believe is right, as you have, as I have, doesn't absolve you from the consequences of those actions. Someone must always pay the price.
Crow was definitely wrong about Saladin. And I think I was too. I think many of us were. Lots of us saw him in the opening act last year of the Season of the Chosen as just a bloodthirsty warmonger who despised the Cabal and all they stood for, and wasn't willing to really give them a chance, even in the field of diplomacy. But now he stands alongside them, accepts and appreciates their honor, understands that an alliance with them is more important than even himself, and can also see the similarities not only between himself and Keitel's Cabal, but also between himself and a young Guardian who still has to learn what mercy truly looks like. Thanks to the actions of Brachus Forge, the coalition between the Guardians of the Lost City and the Cabal Ascendancy has been formed, and now stands firm. Where things go from here and where this alliance will end up, we have yet to see, but I definitely do not believe this is the last that we will see of it. I hope that certain Eliksni and Awoken allies may, in time, find their way into the fold. Ikora in the Season of the Lost prompted Mara to speak with Empress Keitel, and we already have close ties ourselves to the Eliksni of the House of Light, having saved Mithrax and his people. This alliance is forming, and though it may be a little ragtag, even though we may be all survivors, I think that there is one thing that Guardians have continuously proven, and have only proven more strongly with the operation of Operation Elbrus. It is this. There is strength in unity. Strength that comes from everyone standing together in spite of their differences to face an adversary that cannot be defeated by one group alone. But that's all from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead and do the typical stuff of leaving a like. If you want to see that cutscene of Saladin's past where he explains the meaning of mercy, I've got a video on that linked in the end card, so go ahead and take a look at that. We'll resume with the Rhulk raid lore tomorrow, and we should hopefully be able to get that out to you in decent time. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Parodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.